think it didn't record it. Okay, so now here, what are the what we discuss again? I will revise. So now here we need to join Azure VM for the identity purpose, for single sign-on purpose, auditing purpose, then to provide conditional access. Like we need to join to the Entra ID, and by joining to the Entra ID, what are the advantages is even we can integrate even with the Microsoft 365 kind of things, and Intune also can control our devices as the endpoint devices also. With the Intune also we can provide the control. So now, like we need to discuss, like all these days we created the Azure VMs, but now these Azure VMs we need to join to either to the Entra ID or to the hybrid kind of like a connection also we need to join. So for this, what are the prerequisites is we required one Azure subscription, and we need Azure Entra ID with that tenant should be there. Then one Windows Server and Windows 10 or 11 kind of desktop. Then we need Entra ID user with the proper permissions at the Entra ID level to connect to that VM. And in the NSG, we required that public IP to connect. In the inbound rule, we need to open 3389, and in the outbound rule, this VM need to communicate with the Entra ID over the 443. It's going to communicate. Okay, so then we are assuming by default with the subscription, like when we create an Azure account, we are getting a default Entra ID, that tenant we are using, and in the tenant, I'm going to create a new user I'm creating. Okay, so new user and I'm assigning the password, or even we can create the groups also, and we can attach the permissions, all those, and we can join this user to the group also. Then, like in the Entra ID, I'm going to enable like a system identity. So what is the meaning of system identity is like Azure VMs want to communicate with any of the other Azure services for that authentication or back kind of permissions. We need to enable the system identity. Okay, and even time zone also should be synchronized perfectly. And we need to like in the VM system assigned identity, we need to go to settings. In that system identity also we need to on. Then RDP we need to open 3389. Then we need to join that VM to Entra ID. So now we need to log into that using the RDP we are going to log in. Okay, then I'm joining that to Azure Active Directory. So that's in the accounts. Like I'm joining that and I'm entering that user credentials. Okay, then restart is mandatory. Then add that enter ID user to. After that, again I'm login as a local admin itself. That means while creating, you may give the user like Azure user like that. Okay, then I'm going to log into local user. Then that enter ID user, I'm joining to local users and groups. I'm joining them. Okay, so local users I'm going to join. Okay, after that I'm going to log into that VM from the enter ID user. I'm going to log in. Okay, so normally we'll give our domain name, right? But here this is we need to give Azure AD slash. This is our user, and at the rate that domain we need to enter while entering. Okay, so normally if it is our domain name is CloudSoft or like slash, that's we are going to give. But here we need to enter the username is Azure AD slash that user. Then at the rate that tenant domain what we have, that's we need to link it. Okay, so with this we are going to log into that VM with the enter ID we are going to provide. Okay, so with the enter ID, we are going to log into this. Okay, so any doubts on this? Any doubts? So what is that system assigned identity is? It's one of the managed identity. automatically whenever a resource has been created, okay, for the resource, for one resource we have, like it's maybe for the virtual mission or for the any of that function app or app services going to create, and it is used for the authentication purpose with other Azure services. Like my VM want access maybe a key vault for the sensitive details or storage or database. So then that is going to be authenticate, and even when we delete that resource, automatically the system identity like uh, is going to be deleted also. Okay, and that authentication is going to be happen with the Entra ID. That authentication is going to happen with those resources also. We are giving the permissions. Okay, and while giving that, we can give the RBAC kind of permissions also, like to which services we want to access. That kind of permission. Say, suppose I want to give for the vault, I want to give vault reader kind of permissions. Like this, I can assign the permissions to that. Okay. So then we are logging to this Entra ID, and what are the advantages we can enable by joining to that Entra ID is we can enable MFA and we can provide conditional access. Okay, so then this is to everyone we are going to access, or we can access even to the some of the users also. Like we can enforce MFA. That also we'll discuss. Okay, so then. Like here, next what we need to do is, so we need to enable multi-factor authentication, and we need to provide that conditional access to control Azure VM. So we have joined that Azure VM now with the Entra ID, or before itself for the company wise, what are the standards we have. According to that, we need to enforce MFA for all the Entra ID users, and we want to provide like a conditional access rules also, only from my company trusted IPs only I want to allow to access the devices. If the user try to log into that VM from the unknown IPs, then I don't want to allow them. Okay, so for that purpose, we are going to apply conditional access rules. So then, in order to enable MFA, okay, so one method is like we can go to Entra ID. In the Entra ID, we can navigate to Entra ID properties. In the Entra ID properties, we can go to manage security defaults. In that, we can enable manage security default. Okay, so this will enable for all the users. So in the Entra ID, okay, so we can navigate to that properties. Then from that, we are going to enable Entra ID security defaults. We can save. Okay, so then if we want to do it only for some specific users, for all the users, I don't want to apply. Then we can go to that user. Say previously we discussed, we created one user, test user, and in the test user we can go for the multi-factor authentication. And to the test user, we are going to create, or we are going to enable the multi-factor
MFA.
authentication. We are going to enable. Say either to all the, that depends upon the company. We can assign to either to the specific users we are going to enforce, or to all the users we are going to apply that MFA. Then we need to provide a conditional access policy also. Okay, so that means maybe if the I'm going to create a new policy. Okay, and I'm using the user is test user, and this app is like I have chosen remote desktop services because that end user to the VM is connecting through the RDP itself. That is the reason for which app we are going to provide the conditional accesses. For the RDP, we are going to provide. Then in the conditional access, what I'm going to keep is, okay, so that like a location, I'm keeping all locations. Okay, so then excluded that like a trusted location, and I'm choosing required multi-factor authentication. Okay, so what is that meaning is, like if the user other than our office IP addresses. If the user login, definitely I'm giving the permission. If the user enables, if the user enables,
The user is enabled, then
if the user is enabled with the MFA only, like means user need to log in with the MFA, that means he need to enter that MFA login also, and then only I'm going to give the permission to that. If the user not able to provide that multi-factor authentication, okay, so then we are not
log in
going
that
to
VM.
log into that VM. Okay, so that's we are going to provide like a conditional like a policies we are going to uh, define. Okay, so that is the advantage of joining them with the Entra ID. Okay, so with the Enter ID by joining that, so that is the advantage. So here what we have set up we'll discuss. So now, like in my like I need to go to conditional access, and like a conditional access. What I'm doing is in the Enter ID protection conditional access, I'm creating a policy and I'm assigned that user, maybe in our use case target user. Then I'm choosing like a that access apps are selecting, so that apps are not VMs we are choosing, because that VM is connected through Microsoft Remote Desktop Services. Okay, so then I'm going to provide the condition locations, all locations. If you want, even say suppose you don't want to use zero trust kind of thing, even you can include your office locations also. Okay, so then I'm going to provide all the locations. Then I'm like granting by requiring multi-factor authentication, and even if it is Intune managed device, that should be depends upon the Intune wise also. It should get like a compliance wise. It need to match. Okay, so then only I'm going to apply. Okay, so then if the user tries to log into that VM, okay, it's mandatory. It need to prompt for the MFA. Okay, and it depends upon that. If you don't provide those, that should be blocked to access that. So whatever the conditional policies we have specified, okay, so that's we need to provide. So hence we want to require the multi-factor authentications, and what is the main advantage is prevent unauthorized access in case of my credentials have been compromised, like that it happens also. What is the advantage is, like Enter ID is going to recognize that and is going to prevent that one. Okay, and we are going to give the grant that access if only that in that use case if MFA is passed, and the second one is even this Intune wise also, the device need to be registered as compliant itself. Okay, so another conditional based policy what we can give is even based on the location based access also we can provide, or maybe compliant also, like maybe in the Intune environment it should be compliant, then only I want to link. And say suppose one user want to access that application in the non-business hours, maybe like my bank times are only 9 to 6. Okay, so that means I want to give the access to those devices only in the banking hours itself. Now, even a lot of banks also enforcing this after 6 o'clock. The even if they want to work also, the system doesn't allows us to perform those kind of operations also. Means I want to allow the access to those apps or something only based on the time base itself. Okay, and even we can give role base also. We can give. Okay, and if any of the high risk kind of IPs or maybe like devices are there, then we can block the access for them. Okay, so these all the advantages we are going to provide. And even if any like a guest user is there, or maybe like external contract worker, for those users also will give the limited kind of access we can provide. Okay, so these all the advantages we are going to get this when we join to that Entra ID. Okay, so then how we enable to the user is in the Entra ID users we enabled MFA, and in the Entra ID protection we provided the conditional access, and depends upon our requirement we need to enable the rules, and depends upon the Intune compliances, or depends upon the MFA conditional access conditions, it's going to be provided. Okay, so then even to the login also we can add like a role-based access control. So we can provide the role-based access control also. So these all we are going to provide. And that app, what is the app we have chosen while giving the conditional access? So maybe RDP we can choose, or sometimes we have Azure Windows VM sign in also is one of the app we have while providing the conditional app, so conditional access. We chosen the users. So now here, like we need to choose the target resources, right? There in the cloud apps, we need to choose like maybe Microsoft Remote Desktop Services or Azure Windows VM sign-in kind of apps. If you don't get that, you try to choose all cloud apps we are going to choose. Then in the conditions, we need to choose either the location, device platform, sign in risk, all these we need to specify. In the conditions, we need to specify all these. Okay, so then we need to enforce that policy. So after that, we'll test that with the enter ID. Okay, then even if you go to enter ID sign in logins also, it's going to record all the logins also. Okay, so like based on that user, we can filter and we can log in also. Okay, so then, so now, like already with the subscription, I said, right, we got a default tenant we are getting, but I don't want to use that tenant. I want to create my own Entra ID tenant also. Say suppose by default I got one account, but I want to manage one more domain also from the same Azure subscription we want to manage. Then I want to add that also to my I want to add that also to my like already one default tenant is there, but I'm going to I want to control one more domain also. That's I'm going to create my own tenant. Then like maybe say suppose we will add cloudsoft.com. So if we don't have locally, then you can add this tenant. If you have already on premises, you have your AD, then we need to use AD sync or Entra ID sync. We need to use to sync that. Okay, so then like what we need to do is we need to go to our Entra account, then manage tenants, and we are going to create the tenant we are creating. The tenant we are creating. Okay, so maybe your organization name and initial domain name. Okay, so from which country we are going to organize. Okay, so this is our own tenant we are creating, and this for this tenant also we can create the users conditional access, and while creating the VM also to this domain also we can add like that VM need to be added to this domain also we can control, or even from the in the hybrid kind of environment what is happening is this tenant we are syncing with the on-premises kind of thing, we are going to sync it. With the on-premises, we are going to sync this one. We are adding a custom domain. Okay, so then even in the custom domain, whatever the domain we have added for the to verify the ownership of that, they will provide a one test record, and in the domain we are going to add that test record. This is optional, but in the production it's recommended. Okay, so then you can create a user in our new tenant we are going to create. Okay, a new user, and like if you want to use that account also for the provisioning of resources for the new account we can add our subscription also, because when we create an Azure account we are getting a subscription that is already linked with the default tenant, but now we created a custom tenant, and to that custom tenant also we can add that existing subscription, or we can create a new subscription also we can create. Okay, so then like when the user log into that, like he can use that system account, or with that account he can create the resources also. And now what user is doing is, with our custom tenant whatever that we have created, so using this we are going to log in. Okay, so using this he is going to log into this. And what is this domain we are linking is, so now here say here I have my domain name. So my domain name I have registered with assume GoDaddy. Now I have added that domain name. So suppose if I add wipro.com in my Entra ID domain, I'm not the owner of wipro.com. Okay, so in order to validate, or in order to trust whether you are the owner of that domain name, what Azure will provide is, like they will provide one text record. These all DNS records will called this text record. If I'm the owner of Wipro.com, I need to update in my domain settings. If I'm not the owner of that, I can't update that one. Okay, that means what Azure is doing with this step, whether you are the actual owner of the domain or not, they're going to validate. Okay, if I am able to keep the test in my domain name, what Azure will assume? Azure will assume I am the owner of that domain. Okay, so even without that also we can use, but like we don't get the trust on that you are the owner of that domain. Okay, so for the practice purpose, even in the local Active Directory also, if we want the domain wipro.com, we can create a. Okay, so but we can't link with the email, because I can't send the external emails, all that with that domain. I can't use it over the internet. Also, I can't use it because I'm not the owner of that domain. Okay, so but if you are the domain owner, and if you want to control from the Azure Entra ID also that domain, then like we need to link our own domain with the test DNS we are adding. Means that will give the confirmation. Okay, you are the owner of that, and Azure also can validate that. Azure also can validate, yes, you are the owner of that. Okay, so now in this use case, like we are going to use multiple tenants also, or in the hybrid environment also we have on premises also we can sync it. Okay, so that is also we can sync. Okay, so what exactly your understanding of tenant? Say for the multiple companies we have our own access environment. Okay, so we have different directories or different domain names we have. Okay, so that's we are going to create a directory. Normally we'll call it directory kind of thing in local, but in Entra ID we are calling that as a tenant, and every tenant will have one tenant ID, and that should be linked to our domain name. Then to that tenants also we can create their own users and groups also, and their own application registrations also we can do. Okay, and for the multiple tenants, different tenants, we have different conditional access also. We can policies can be applied. That means I have two different companies. For the companies, the policies are different for two different companies. That's at the tenant level we can manage those conditional policies also we can provide. And while creating the tenant, what are the details we need to provide is our organization name and initial domain name, and from which country that has been operating, that's we need to provide. Okay, so these all the details we need to provide to those. So why we are using different tenancies, different domains we have, or different environments also we can use. And in the multi-tenant SaaS-based applications also, some requirements would be there. Each SaaS-based account should have their own tenant also we can enforce. That is also for the authentication. That's they want their own entity kind of thing also we can enforce. So for all this purpose, we are going to use the tenants we are going to link. Okay, and if, for every company, I have different conditions. I don't want the same set of conditional access and same policies. Then even at that level also, we are isolating them. At that level also, we are going to isolate. Okay, so then even what are the permissions like RBAC level also, we can enforce the different kind of permissions we can enforce. Okay. So what is the user is? A user entity like is maybe a internal like a internal our employee, or maybe a guest employee also through the app he is going to access. Okay. And to that users also we are going to provide a role-based access control we are going to provide. Okay, so by default we are getting some RBAC roles like reader, contributor, okay, owner, okay, so then virtual mission contributor, user access administrator. Like this also we are going to give the RBAC permissions, and we are joining that user to that roles also we are adding. Which role we are giving, according to that they are going to get the permissions also. So when the user log in with that username, only those permissions user is going to get. It depends upon the RBAC roles we are getting. Okay. So Umid, do you have account?
No, sir.
Okay. So we'll try to create an account. Say okay. So these all we need to we need to have good hands on and joining to that hybrid kind of Entra ID. So once we discuss to the Entra ID, in the Entra ID, what we can do is we can automatically enroll that device to Intune. Also, we can do it. First, we are linking to Entra ID device. After that, we can link to Intune, and with the Microsoft 365 kind of suite also we can control. Okay, the same steps even we can do for Azure ABD also we can provide. For the Azure ABD also by default we are joining to the Enter ID. So from that also we can control the devices. Okay, so those we'll discuss in the tomorrow session. Okay, so for Citrix you want join at 9 o'clock.
Okay, nine in the morning.
Yes, now after 6 minutes.